Hey everybody, how's it going? Let's check out your videos and see how everybody did this week.
Hello everybody. Here is my pawn, rook, and king. Here are my models in solid view. And then here's the wireframe version of those. Pretty dense on the topology, I would say, especially around like the corners and such. Um, so I would need to find a way to reduce that. Um, the only one I added subdivision surface was on this one because it looked strange without it. That's how it looks without it. I guess it doesn't look too bad, but it looked kind of weird. And I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I'll go over my process a little bit more here. I pretty much modeled it in the same method that I used for both the pawn and the king, and try to find a way to just intuitively create these. I was having a lot of problems with the scale at first because I didn't set my origin to the geometry. So it's like this,
Okay,
like I'm just
yeah.
getting used to it again. And it was really fun to actually get back into it. Like I had a lot of fun making this. Um, and usually, like, I remember when I would start projects last semester, like I wasn't able to like get lost in things and just kind of do them without like getting super frustrated at the controls and like getting used to everything. But I remembered like how to do a lot of things, so I just felt so um
Yeah, what you just did there with the insetting of the top faces, that was great. Um, you tried to fill and then inset, and then you went back and deleted that inset then fill. Yeah, that's exactly how you want to go about the top there, at least to get the right kind of topology.
relieved that I actually remembered how to do things. And this is the part where I really struggled to get it to kind of look like, other students' examples. I wanted to try to get the six, like,
So that's key. I'll talk about that with some of the other ones too. Yeah, there's going to be we want to right now we're just trying to reproduce this set. And so this set has 6 of the castle extrusions along the top. Some people did 4.
little ridges there. I think there's six, maybe more, but ultimately I think I was able to put eight, I think. If we fast forward a little bit here, you can see that I really, really, really struggled with getting that top.
So the thing you did there where you subdivided to get more subdivisions up here, that at first glance that seems like it's going to be a good strategy, but you're actually creating, even though they look like quads, the ones that are adjacent to the subdivision ones that you created here. Yeah, and so you can see it pretty clearly here. So this is actually an n-gon, right? Something that's going to be more than 4 sides because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And even though it looks like a square, that's going to be problematic later on when if you were to apply subdivision surface to it. And so you need to go back to where you were using the screw modifier to establish the amount of rotational um, subdivisions for the rook and do the math there. I would recommend 6 times 3. That's going to give us what, 18, maybe times 4. That would give us enough space to be able to select the rook extrusions along the top and have space in between each one. So you had the right idea, and you knew that you needed to get to the math, but you need to take a couple steps back in order to keep that smooth and not end up with n-gons on the side.
Struggled with getting that top right. Um, and think this is where I figured out something else. I just like extruded it a little bit and then set it and then scaled it inward or scaled it in a little. And yeah, so that's what I was able to come up with. I think it looks pretty good.
Yeah, you got that. You did a good job of like getting the shape to scale. Just a couple of topology issues there, that kind of result in some of the weirdness with the shading that's happening there. But the pawn looks good.
But I don't know if it's accurate. So, but I hope you guys enjoy it.
Okay, that was a great first step there in warm up. I would just go back to the drawing board with the rook and do that math that you were working on there about trying to get the right number of subdivision for extrusion at the very beginning. That way you wouldn't have to, that way it's just going to be consistent across the entire surface. Here's Maya.
Hi everybody. So my process for modeling the king piece, I pretty much just followed the instruction video. So I start out by making the Bezier curve, and then using the screw tool to give it the radial symmetry, and afterwards converting it to mesh, and then filling in the top and bottom. And then after that, I beveled this little area right here, and then extruded it a bunch of times to make the little cross shape. And then after that, I had a little bit of trouble with the top piece here. So what I ended up doing is I added a new sphere mesh, cut off this like bottom part, and then used the bridge command to join this edge loop and then this edge loop together. And then before that I joined the two shapes together, and it was able to pretty cleanly.
So looking at this, up in topology. Okay, so you can solve some of the problems on the, let's call this the front and the back side, by simply dissolving that edge that make this a quad, dissolving that edge makes this a quad, and then you have quad, 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 quad. Now over here, when we have this becomes a little bit more difficult. Let's see. We want to put this, so dissolving here, that gives us an n-gon. Dissolving here, that gives us, we would need to so let's see, later on I can grab this and open up your file and we'll look at how that would happen.
Combine these two. So that was my process for the king piece. And then for the pawn piece, it was pretty straightforward. It was literally just doing the Bezier curve and then filling in the top and bottom after converting it to mesh. And I did have to adjust, after I made it into a mesh, I did have to adjust this top part a little bit to give it more roundness. Overall, this was also...
That's good. I would just say that very top one there, so you only have an n-gon on the top. Delete that n-gon and then use the face, it's either face or mesh fill, and quad fill is going to divide that up so that you have quads along the top.
It's pretty just straightforward. Yeah. So for the rook, basically the same process as the other ones. Just started out with the Bezier curve and adjusted the different curves and edges to match the reference image. It did take me a few tries to adjust some of the areas, such as that one right there. It took me a little bit to adjust it properly. After that, yeah, just
So, right, the subdivisions I'm talking about here are, yeah, our curve. Okay, these are the curves. That's the rotational subdivisions are going to be in the screw modifier, not over here. These are going to be the number of subdivisions that are happening in these in between points. And so we see what happened there in between these points. We get this bunch, kind of bunched up, which we can, dissolve some of the faces in there to alleviate some of those areas that are too dense.
it took me a little bit to adjust it properly. After that, yeah, just applied the screw modifier, converted it to mesh.
If you're in the screw modifier, our rotations here, right? So something that's going to be divisible by 6, it's going to give us enough rotations around in order to get the 6 castle extrusions along the top.
And filled in the top and bottom. So yeah, I'm doing that here. And at first I tried doing the grid fill for the top, but then I realized that it would be kind of hard to extrude the like little castle spire things. So I decided to do a regular fill and then inset the circle edge loop a little bit.
Great strategy.
After that, I realized I didn't
Yeah, the only problem is here that you kind of don't have enough geometry.
count the
Exactly.
the I forgot what it's called, but the amount of like the resolution. I didn't count it properly, so I had to go back to the original curve and then copy it again, and then start over basically. And I had to do that 2 times because the second time I didn't count it properly either. But I finally was able to do to just extrude up the 6 spire
Perfect.
things, and then finally in the middle there, I inset the edge a little bit more, and then lifted it up a bit, just add a bit of roundness to the top there. And yeah, that's pretty much the process for that.
Excellent. That was really good. You went through the right process there. The only thing with the rook at the final process there was that beveling sort of the very top part of the castle extrusions is probably going to be in order, but that's very, very, very close. Awesome. Here's Autumn. Autumn doesn't seem to be any audio. Did you upload another one that has audio? Let's see.
Hello, I'm Adam, and this is my assignment. Become on my
Okay, so this is twisting, and so that's definitely not ideal. Either maybe perhaps you nudge one of the settings in the screw modifier, something like that.
so these are my chess pieces. Quite fun, interesting to learn to do. The king. I made my top piece a little bit more 3D instead of 2-dimensional like Mr. Branded, just to make it a little bit more plus piecey.
Yeah, the top of the king ended up looking pretty wide here, and then these things stick out quite a bit. I don't know. Usually, this is going to be a bit flatter here.
I don't know. Then we have my rook and my pawn. Oops.
The primary issues with the rook there are that it looks like the castle extrusions are not the same size, and then the twisting. We definitely don't want to have that.
No fun. This was kind of a fun project. You saw me in the Discord, I was pretty stupid, but I have it done. It's pretty fun to do. And then to look at the topology, you got my king is all evened out. You got my rook.
Yeah, so like this one's 4 wide, this one's 3 wide. So we want 6 equal ones up there, and then it's like something strange up here at the top of the pond. Can't quite see it yet. Yeah.
I even have the castle that all evened out, so it's all it's easy to split down the middle. And then we have the pawn. This stuff is all so pretty dimensional, good topology, if that's the correct wording. And then we made that time-lapse video of making the rook. And I think I did it right from what it seems, using this and then extruding it. That's where I was kind of lost. You know, how stuff was worded, it was... my brain just wasn't working. Maybe I was just really tired from work those few days. And so you just get to see me messing with the dimensions. It was actually my second rook. My first rook is built up from just like, I remember it was a cylinder or something I made.
Okay, so right there, as soon as you applied the screw modifier, let's see. Offset, perhaps the original, because that's the 0, so that should not be doing it, but perhaps there's something with the original curve where the rotational values were not zeroed out. You didn't apply rotation on it. Yeah, see what's going on there. If you apply the screw modifier to just something very simple, are you still getting this twisting? You shouldn't get the twisting.
Show you guys after the video. You guys. This is me adjusting it. It's 2 fill in the top. I forgot which one it was. And I was like, nope. Then I remembered, oh, grid fill. Then lining it up so it looks better. And then
yeah, so here
lining faces.
This is where you ran into some issues, like trying again using the grid fill at the top. You want to use the regular fill in the inset in order to get past that, so you don't have to, because there's no way to extrude six equal castle extrusions from the grid fill. That's good. You got a good first step there, but you got to take a couple steps back and look at the rook again there. All right, so that was Autumn. Here's Michaela.
Hello, I'm Michaela Poppin, and here is my time-lapse video. I had a memory leak with Adobe, so I couldn't make the video faster, but it's still only 3 minutes anyway. So here I duplicated the king's Bezier curve and resized it a bit, and then I also aligned it up with the king over on the right, on the z-axis, I think. And I resize it a little bit, and then here I delete some of the vertices, and then I reshape it to the ball shape
that
the pawn has. And then
yeah,
over here I bend this one down,
saver.
and then I change it so that it looks more like the collar on the pawn. Doing the ball there, and then I change this one up here. And then, more resizing of it to make it look more like the reference. And here I'm doing the collar again. This time making it look more accurate like the reference because it's a different kind of collar compared to the other ones.
Good attention to detail.
And then over here
there.
I'm deleting this vertice because it's unnecessary.
That's good. Yeah, you don't want to have extra vertices in there. It's going to create the. It's going to result in.
And then more
that's just too
adjustments.
dense.
And more adjustments here. And then I convert it to a mesh. And then I grid fill here.
Yep, that's right. That's what I was saying.
And then I spin it to realign it or line it up, forward, straight ahead.
Right. That's
and
good
I do
detail.
the same thing for the bottom. And that's it with the pawn. And over here is the rook. Here it is if it's a mesh. Did it extrude at the top? So, same.
Okay, you're the only one that did this. I think you have 8 along the top. We want to go for that 6. Just when we're gonna get to design our own set after we're done with this set. But here, yeah, you want to let's try and hit the 6 mark.
Thing with the king over here. And then turn it to scale and all that, along with the pawn here. And that's it. Thank you. Goodbye.
Okay, pretty good so far. Some things to fix there. You had some. It looked like castle extrusions on the king, which aren't really. That's not quite right. Here's Mariah's.
So the process I used to make to do this was I did the king verse, of course, and I followed along, except for some reason, if you can tell, I had a hard time with the cross, because I guess, how do I, because when you did it, you had 3 sections here, I only had just 2, and I'm not sure what I did wrong, so I tried to fix it, I did the best I can, so that's that.
Yeah, so it's hard to tell from the video, but there's just definitely some stuff going on here. Either some things got pulled inside out, like the shading looks like either this is a totally separate piece or there's something going on there with this. And so, yeah, maybe deleting from here and trying to rebuild this section again would be in order.
Yeah, so I just follow along, and then I use that process of following along with the others, like the pawn. The pawn was really easy, has simple shapes. This one I had a hard time with because at first I didn't really first understand when the work. Yes. Okay. I didn't really understand what you mean by like the curves or something, whatever you said about if you wanted more curves or but I kind of did because you said it near the end of the video to have these
the castle extrusions, but we want to have 6 equally spaced
to pay attention of you said at the beginning and the end about to pay attention about this, but I still didn't really understand, so I did my best, and
yeah, this is a good first shot, but yeah, like maybe a fresh start on this one. And yeah, you're just running into that issue that we talked about. We want to have a rotational subdivision that's going to be set in the screw modifier that's going to give us something divisible by 6 because we want to have 6 of these around the top.
fiddled around. You're gonna see that in the time lapse for the rook that had a hard time with that. But yeah, for all of them, I just kind of follow along of the video, which really helped. Okay, and then I think that's all I have to say about this. I just follow along with the video.
Okay.
That really helped. And then
keep in mind, it's like a 285 class, so a lot of the videos here are going to be me sort of explaining a couple concepts, but not a lot of complete tutorial stuff.
Here's the video of the rook process. So there's gonna be probably some instances where I just kind of just stop randomly. It's because I'm also just looking at the video to make sure I'm doing what I'm doing correctly and following along.
So, right here, this is that number that you need to explore some options. So, check out the feedback for everybody else. But we're going to want something that's divisible by 6 because we need to get to that 6 castle extrusions later on. Okay, awesome, Mariah. Let's look at Aaron's.
Hey all, so here are my chess pieces for this week's assignment. You'll see from left to right I have the pawn, the king, and the rook, each modeled according to the provided scale and reference images. And you can see there the wireframe view in solid and in X-ray. And then the solid view.
Looks good.
As for the modeling process, for each of these, I began by adding a plane, collapsing it to a single vertex, and then extruding it along the profile of the piece in the reference images. Then revolving that and adding in whatever additional elements were required, such as the extruded pieces at the top of the rook or the king's crown. For the pawn here, I did that initial process and then added a subdivided cube to the top for the rounded bit, which, while topologically dense, does fit the profile, although I'm still not sure if I should have done that over just revolving it as well.
Yeah, revolving it is just a simpler solution there. It's going to end up with some cleaner topology, but yeah, it's just that it's hard to look at the math right here, but if you did one less subdivision on the top, you might have ended up right. But yeah, there's no super good reason to do that when the pawn is the simpler piece and you can just revolve.
Well, for the king, I replicated that process, the extrude and revolve process for the body, and then for the top, I again traced around that piece, or the crown here, with the same technique, and then manually filled in each of the polygons to retain quad topology, and joined them together and connected them. That did create some problematic edge loops, which, if I go to solid view, you'll see, to an extent, gave me some uneven subdivisions. So perhaps a different strategy would have been better there. And for the rook, I of course have the
This looks close, but it looks like one of the extrusions is not the same as the other.
time lapse here. Whoops. Where you'll see here, I begin by adding a plane, collapsing it, and extruding the single vertex along the profile of the object. I did opt for this strategy over curves because, while more difficult to match some curves exactly, it does give me better control of the size of each polygon and just the topology overall. See there, I added the strew modifier and revolved it, and then you see here I'm working on the rook's, crown, and I'm realizing here that I can't subdivide, or I can't divide the 16 steps that I revolved it at evenly into 6. So I gave it this kind of uneven but still symmetrical look to the top.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good quick fix there, but I mean, you want to go back to that step before you turn it into a mesh and then address that. So you know what the correct math is here. you just got to go back and take a one step back and do that. Good. That's great. Great start, Aaron.
Here's what my 3 chess pieces look like.
Hi, Jordan.
And then a wireframe.
You have 5 up here. Dense.
For modeling the rook, I just followed the instruction and grabbed the faces at the top and extruded them upwards. And then afterwards I applied a subdivision surface to smooth out all the edges.
Okay, so that's why some of the topology got very, very, very
And then,
dense.
yeah, this is a result of that. And then after that, I applied a bevel on top of that to keep the square shape of the top.
Yeah, so beveling, like maybe just beveling the top of these manually, but adding a bevel modifier on the entire thing create some issues like this kind of thing here at the root of the cancel extrusions there. Yeah, okay. It'd be good to see the time lapse of that happening. Here's Gage.
My name's Gage Bergeron, and here are my chess pieces here. I can take us through the topology of these first. Just a quick look at everything. Take us back into materials. I designed these all pretty much the same. Turn my reference on. Started with this reference that has been sized down to the correct size. And then in orthographic view, I'm able to get a perfectly straight on view of these pieces, to which I can make the pieces out of curves with the pen tool. And then after that, you can see that we have the curve and the mesh. I just duplicated the completed curve with a screw modifier and made it into a mesh to fill in the gaps, such as like on top that we can see in wireframe view. That grid filled that into the top, and on the bottom you can see there too.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like there's a bunch of subdivisions, then the grid fill, on the bottom, which strikes me as perhaps a bunch of unnecessary topology there.
Here I have my time lapse.
Yeah,
In the
so
time lapse you can
ended up
clearly
with-
see
You ended up with 5 or less as well, and so that's not great. We want to have 6 there.
just exactly how I used the Bezier curve.
Yep, this all looks how we want to go about that there for this first step. Okay, so yeah, you're kind of making this bottom rounded when there is this, we can set it up on the side here, but it's not a perfect orthographic view of the piece. And so we do want to make the bottom of them flat, right? So the reference, a lot of times you're not going to have perfect reference, and this is one of those cases. Is that we want to use this as a guide to get as close as we can, but then we don't want the bottom edge to be curved, we want the bottom edge to be flat. Right,
And then
remember,
here is making the mesh.
a perfect orthographic view when you're doing it from that side, but the image itself is not taken from a perfect orthographic view.
Duplicating it, making the mesh, and filling the holes on top and bottom. This was a little bit of a more challenging part, figuring out
You just didn't hit that 6 subdivision before you started that part.
how to make those stone castle walls on top.
Yeah, the loop cut there is not gonna get you what you wanted. The grid fill is kind of throwing off the loop cut tool there. Yeah, Yeah, okay. Close. But yeah, I mean, it's something that everybody had some issues here with. But yeah, close on that one. And okay, that's good. All right. So let's look at this real quick and address two things. So the pawns, yeah, our best route there was having the revolved, which I believe. Okay, and so here, the way that the pawn curve works, and all the curves for that matter, if we were to look at this, like this, here it is in curve form, like so. And so this amount of subdivision is going to be the amount of subdivisions that happen per between 2 points on the curve. And so if we look at this from the side here, you can see that setting it to 12 gives us what we want here, but makes this too dense. So how can we even this out? We can even this out after the fact over here by dissolving some of the faces. And so if we come in here and look at this, yeah, we really don't need this many faces here. And so we can come in and tab in, tab D, there we go. Let's go to edge mode, there we go. I can select, alt select to get loops, and maybe get every third one. There we go. And then you should be able to dissolve edge and end up with something that's much more in line with what you would want there. Yeah, so that's just an example. Almost everyone's pieces need some of that cleanup there, and to be doing that before any sub-D surface stuff. And so when you set your initial points, your initial curve subdivision settings, you want to set that according to some of these larger spans. And then this week, come in and clean those up so that you have what looks like relatively well distributed topology without sections that are getting completely black. There will be some edge loops that are closer to each other, and they'll probably be necessary in areas where there is a sharper turn, or there needs to be more curvature detail, things like that. And so, again, here if I clean up the bottom, I grab this one, this, I'll put all, end up with much more equally distributed topology. So we end up with something we don't, when we zoom out just a touch, we don't want to see, in most instances, a lot of black bands where everything is super, super, super dense there. And yeah, so that's one major change everyone needs to make. The other one is looking at the top of the king and going back to the drawing board with the rook and thinking about that math that everybody ran into at the end. But if you think about that at the beginning, your process there at the end ends up being much, 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 much easier. All right, great, looking good.